Welcome back, friends. It looks like we have a new season of Doctor Who, and I guess we're calling it Season 2. So the premiere episode, Episode 1, the one otherwise entitled The Robot Revolution. Now, spoilers do lie ahead. If those aren't for you, well, take this as a warning. Let's get on with the show. While this is a premiere episode, it has a lot to set up. So it's got to do things like introduce our new companion. It needs to somewhat reset things from where they left off last season with that fairly disappointing finale with Sutek and all that stuff, as well as give us the obligatory start of the big old new mystery box that this season is somewhat required to have in this day and age. It did all those things. In doing so, however, I think it really had some issues with the pacing and the structure, but all that said, we are still light years and parsecs ahead of Space Babies from last year, so I guess small miracles still are miracles. There are some really good things that I do love in this episode. The seemingly practical designs of the 50s era aesthetic spaceships, the robots, the ray guns, those were all awesome. I also really like the physical changes to the emoji faces. I know Doctor Who has had the emoji robots for a while now, but to see them actually physically change the structure of their face instead of it just being a digital display, I don't know why that really struck me as being a really cool choice here. They also really matched the practical locations on Belinda's planet, or at least the indoor locations that looked practical, but it really clashed with the AR wall generated background stuff. That might be a me problem because I have had a lot of issues in a lot of things with the AR wall. Sometimes it looks amazing, other times it looks cheap and like they're physically standing in front of a fake thing. I know CG doesn't always look that great either. I know matte paintings always looked kind of fake too, but there's just something about this that feels like they're overextending themselves too quickly and it's already not looking great, so is it going to age excessively poorly? I don't know. Again, this is Doctor Who. It's not something I've ever really needed to look amazing, so probably just a minor nitpick on my personal taste there. The design for the AI generator also looked pretty cool. It didn't necessarily match the aesthetics of the 50s era retrofuturism. It reminded me something more like, I don't know, maybe the Wiz or something like that. It just struck me as being a different type of design, and I still thought it was pretty cool. It was also very V'gery with the reveal, but I'll get back to that later, because there were a lot of things in this episode that felt like not just Star Trek film-related stuff, but just sci-fi in general, and I'm wondering if that was on purpose. When we get the reveal of who Al actually is, or I should say, who the AI actually is, being Al, and he was all cybered up and probably not the right word because he wasn't a Cyberman. That was so very reminiscent of the way that they showed that mechanicanization. That's not even a word. The way that they showed the person becoming a robot from Superman 3, it felt very much like they were trying to go down that road there. Not sure if it was purposeful, but I guess we'll talk about that a little more later. I also really like the idea of every ninth word being hidden. It was a very convoluted explanation, but I still thought it was a very fun and interesting kind of conceit for the episode. I just wish it had a little bit more payoff in some other hidden message, which, to be fair, there could have been some other hidden messages that way in this episode that I completely missed because I didn't sit there and count every ninth word in every sentence that was ever spoken in the entire episode. And it's possible it will be utilized in the future of the season as well, so I guess I can hold out hope for that as well. But of course, the main thing to like in this episode is Belinda herself. Her ability to completely be unimpressed with the Doctor and her willingness to just right off the bat be up to calling him out for all of his issues, I'm hopeful will carry a lot of weight in this season. In fact, some of the events here lead me to wonder if the Doctor is actually being set up as the, maybe more of an antagonist would be the right word for season 2. I don't know if that's the case whatsoever, but some of the things here felt like he was being set up as more than a benevolent protagonist of this ongoing season 2. Some of the other things that I found to be a bit off-putting in this episode could potentially be saved down the line if they are actually tied up and given a little bit more credence. The treatment of death here was something that felt very wrong to me, and maybe I'm off my mark, but a few of the deaths here really didn't sit right with me. Now, while part of it may be the pacing problem I mentioned earlier in this video, seeing the Doctor losing his de facto 6th-month companion of Sasha 55, it really failed to leave any impression on the audience who didn't know her at all at that point. It did, however, provide Belinda, and us as the audience, I suppose, a fairly unique outsider perspective of the whole doctor-companion relationship without having built up the on-screen connection. And if you couple that with this episode's very heavy-handed incel commentary, which is also something Belinda had to deal with, perhaps we're seeing the beginning of an arc where the Doctor is going to be viewed as being in the wrong with another form of toxic attachment. Whether or not that's something I would like to see in this season remains to be seen, but it feels like they're building towards something here that's a little less than angelic, I guess you could say. And to pull back to that V'ger comment I mentioned earlier on, there were quite a few things that seemed like pulls from elsewhere. Star Trek, Doctor Who, just sci-fi in general, which I can't say is a bad thing, and I can't say it was necessarily intentional. I'm just wondering if we are at a point where there's so much saturation of sci-fi that things are bound to feel repetitive or like they've appeared in something else. We had, among other things, the Al V'ger reveal, the trippy time warp effect. Those things reminded me of the motion picture era of Star Trek. We also had the polish bot, which reminded me somewhat of the DRDs from Farscape, the metal grafting onto the human visual, like I said earlier, Superman 3. The whole attempt by Al to get Belinda to the future kind of felt a bit reminiscent of this last season of Invincible, with Immortal trying to lure Invincible back to his future despotic rule by becoming a bad ruler to get him there. We even had a somewhat reverse of the Impossible Girl situation with the Doctor being shot throughout Belinda's entire timeline, although to what effect this actually had is left very unclear, since it seems like the Doctor didn't actually know what's going to happen next, so I'm not entirely certain what he actually experienced during this lifetime with her. Even the whole bouncing off her timeline while trying to get her home felt kind of like the same situation we had when Amy and Rory were trapped in the past, where the Doctor could never reach them. And the plan of the robots felt very much like a twisted version of what happened in the Girl in the Fireplace. Might be overthinking a lot of this stuff. I just saw a lot of connections here. And again, maybe that's just because I watched so much of this stuff. Back to my issues with death in this episode. I really don't think I'm a huge fan of how they treated Al's demise at the very end. I know they made it very clear throughout the episode that he was not a good guy, and that he was even asking for a merciful end to his pain through death and all of that stuff. But by having him reduced to a sperm and an egg only to be gobbled up by the mop bot while they laugh about it, I don't know, that felt a little off-brand to me, considering just last season we saw the Doctor fighting tooth and nail to save the life of a literal amalgamation of boogers. It reminded me too much of the whole idea of going back to kill baby Hitler, only with no ethical debate whatsoever. They just kind of giggled about it. It was just too much of a punchline, I suppose. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but if the Doctor tried so hard to save the actual racists in last season, this just felt a little bit overly cruel to me. Also, F in the chat for the cat. Do not vaporize cats. Only bit of grace I'm going to give here is that I'm going to go ahead and assume there might be more to this than we've seen so far. It does not seem outside the realm of possibility at all here that RTD is doing some sort of literal Schrodinger's cat play for this season, by having the robot say that the cat is irrelevant, only to have it come back later in the season to show that this is where everything went wrong, and play with the Schrodinger's cat concept would definitely be an idea right up his alley, at least seemingly to me. At the end of the day, those are just some of my thoughts. All in all, not a terrible episode, but I do think it made a few too many fumbles to really be anything outstanding. The key takeaways, however, are the very interesting Belinda character, and I'm very excited to see her kind of fresh dynamic with the Doctor, and hopefully it will actually lead to some more interesting personal tension between the characters instead of the happy-go-lucky everything's fine all the time like we saw with Ruby last season. What did you think? Did you enjoy the episode? Did you hate it? Do you have any ideas for this season? Are you not even watching it? Whatever you think, leave all that down below. Like, share, subscribe, join, and until next time...
Join, increase, hit subscribe.